Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mutahar. Have you been using BattleNet, Discord, Fortnite, PlayStation Network, Roblox, Xbox Live? If so, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a leaked documentation here talking about how violent extremists could be exploiting those popular online services. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we got a wild little, leaked document to look through. Now, to give you an idea, I like to always treat these things with a bit of I always like to be pretty real about this. Okay, so this is by Dan Bogislaw. He's the one that apparently leaked out this intel brief that shows the federal government is terrified of Fortnite in Discord. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, apparently the NCTC is the National Counterterrorism Center, okay? So, I have grown up as a man that has seen things like, I guess, the Patriot Act that I learned about later on in life. There were programs like PRISM, for instance, where back when Edward Snowden leaked out that the US government was basically backdooring some of your favorite services and grabbing as much information as they can. If you ever think that, you're not being spied on an everyday basis, you are, okay? It is what it is. A lot of these federal agencies, a lot of these like intelligence agencies pretty much come to the thought of getting access to your personal data and information. Now, I consider this shit to be really creepy. Some people don't care, but I think we all can at least agree that if this document is real, we're in for some goddamn laughs. Now, this is not for public release, and from what I understand, for some people who are in the intel circuit, this designation U//FOUO is actually a pretty old designation. And if you look at some of the logos for at least Roblox, it seems, Xbox Live, well, not the logo itself, but the fact that in their description, they don't even mention the Xbox Series systems, they just mention Xbox One and the 360 systems here. Yeah, this is probably written a while ago, but it's still funny nonetheless. And there is actually a real implication because in about 6 days, ladies and gentlemen, for anybody that doesn't know, the actual US government has sent letters out to the CEO of Discord, the CEO of Valve, the CEO of Twitch, and Reddit. And they're basically bringing them on, basically for a testimony to talk about extremism on their platform, all right? So again, I think there's an overarching story, but before we basically get into it, let's just read this like meme, okay? So anyways, some violent extremist teenagers probably play online games or use gaming affiliated networks and applications, apps for short. I wouldn't even just say extremist teams. I would actually just say legitimate terrorists are probably still rocking some CS 1.6 in their downtime. Okay, like it is what it is. Probably using that shit to honestly train or like plan their stuff out. But yeah, this is like talking about teenagers, okay? They could be using these applications to communicate with like-minded individuals, conduct plotting, and spread terrorist messaging. Judging from a past report of extremist use of online gaming to enable terrorist activity. Huh. I don't remember that one report, but I really wish I could read that. It's like, video games? Guys, they could lead into some serious Al-Qaeda action going on, all right? All jokes aside, online games and gaming apps and networks provide users with a variety of communication functions, including text, voice, and video chat, everything a growing terror cell needs to communicate, image sharing, friends lists, and discoverable communities of interest. The following chart is an overview of some of the most popular services. So here, ladies and gentlemen, they bring in like BattleNet. Now, of course, in this matrix, they have a whole bunch of summaries over here. So for instance, you see them mentioning with Discord, it's a free text, video, voice chat app tailored to gamers, including a mobile app and PC web browser functionality. And with PlayStation, it's an online gaming network for PlayStation 4 consoles, including a mobile application. You know what's really funny about this matrix? I haven't seen Telegram anywhere. And I'm pretty sure if you're like a fucking terrorist or something, I'm pretty sure you're using like something super encrypted like Telegram or Signal in this case. Instead of using, I don't know if there's any legitimate terrorist organization, even if you're like a teenager, that is planning fucking something on Fortnite, bro. Don't make sense to me. But here you can see that for BattleNet, they're like, yeah, I was playing some Diablo 3. Like, could you imagine the person researching this? Like fucking some agent sitting inside their office. They're like, yeah, I fired up Diablo 3. It's got text chat, it's got voice chat, and it's got friends lists, and it's got a bunch of people trying to sell me gold from the other side of the world. Some stupid shit. Discord, they're like, it has all six, okay? You know, it has all of them. And then, of course, obviously, with Fortnite, it's got voice chat. Are you fucking stupid? Does it not have... Wait, does Fortnite not have, like, a text chat or something? Am I out of my mind? Can you emote plans to other people? Friends lists? It seems like everything has a friend list somehow except, like, Twitch. But yeah, they've got, like, they've basically been analyzing all of these organizations, okay? They've been trying to see... you know, who it is behind these situations, you know? And of course, the more you go down in, they have some like asterisks. For instance, the mere presence of an individual on one or more online gaming platform is not indicative of any nefarious activities. These platforms may provide an avenue to pursue in an existing investigation of a subject when law enforcement observes suspicious behavior that amounts to a sufficient legal predicate to open an investigation. Law enforcement action should not be taken solely on the basis of exercise of constitutionally protected rights or on the apparent or actual race, ethnicity, national origin, or religion of a subject. You know, I really wish I could believe that last segment, but you know, the amount of times I've had a random screening at an airport, I don't know. I mean, just tell me, okay? Just tell me. You think I'm about to do Simsalabim, all right? I get it. You gotta check my balls for something. It's fine. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, it is what it is. This is a pretty innocuous sort of thing. Basically, it shows me that the government's learning. Basically, if they find somebody that is potentially a target of interest, they're gonna start, I guess, subpoenaing your like Discord information or like your PlayStation information, or you know how many times you've been emoting on Fortnite, and possibly using that as a way to build a case against you if they suspect you're somebody that might be a promoter of the evil terrorism. Now, this is a lot of old information, it seems, so I'm kind of having a bit of time like trying to understand like, is this document actually legitimate? And honestly, like, I think it probably is from the NCTC. I just don't think it has any bearing or like any relevancy in any event that has happened in probably the last like couple years, okay? But for anybody that doesn't know, recently there's been a lot of talk about, you know, a lot of these platforms having communities where I guess extremism really does brew. Now, to give you guys a little bit more of an accurate understanding of like what's been going on too, beyond just Discord, obviously you probably have heard of the fact that, you know, with the recent assassination of like, you know, Charlie Kirk, there was the shooter where they actually looked into his Discord communications, and that started to get shared around by the world, and it really opened up a dialogue for a lot of people, you know, who were moving their focus onto services like Discord, because they were like, hey, if this stuff is kind of just happening, and in most cases it's not public, it's always in private channels, is there ways to, I guess, prevent this, or maybe even look beyond the veil so that these federal agencies can take advantage and stop these things before they happen? Which there have been plenty of cases that have happened where, again, you know, it almost seems like when it comes to like a shooter, you know, sometimes they do post about their life story, sometimes they do post about their actions, such as in the case of 2022, when you had the Highland Park parade shooting. And of course, obviously, one of the things about it too is the perpetrator, which was an individual who had apparently frequently posted in an online message board that discussed graphic depictions of death, posted a video of a beheading the week before a shooting, and he had his own Discord server, which was invaded by 4chan users, obviously after the shooting, and has since been shut down. So again, it makes people wonder, it's like, if you have all of this stuff existing before with all the AI and the surveillance state that I guess we live in, why aren't organizations like the FBI kind of stopping it? So again, it made me also dig down into further documents, and this is provided by an organization known as the Property of the People, where you can search these documents for yourself. Again, you can go to their website, search whatever it is that you want, and you can pull up documents such as, for instance, the 2021 DHS reports on militia's violent extremism developing online networks. So here they kind of show a sort of more realistic view, instead of pointing the finger right at Discord or Reddit or whatever, right? But again, remember, this is from 2021, so times have changed a fair bit since then. So here they kind of talk about how apparently violent militia or extremists, so militia violent extremists, which are MVEs, are actively disguising their online social media outreach to promote violent anti-government narratives, connect with other espousing violent extremist views, and share tactical information by using layered communications. So they start to kind of focus again on like the introduction. So they show that stage one, usually these guys are on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and again, obviously other platforms as well too. This could easily include things like Discord or whatever. And then once you start engaging with these guys in a public facing recruitment, then they shift to emerging social media, which obviously is perceived with less restrictive content moderation, which I would imagine would probably be Discord or even like chat services like Telegram or Signal, and of course typically used as a way of vetting potential recruits. And then, of course, they move to even more secure platforms where end-to-end encryption are kind of the norms, right? So they're kind of showing you a 1, 2, 3 step on how people sort of get thrown into worlds like terrorism. So again, they move you in from the public-facing environment, and then they mention secondary groups like MeWe, Parler, for instance, and then, of course, it always ends at Telegram, for instance, or Signal, or any, classified, not classified, but, encrypted messaging service out there. And here they even got like terms as well too. They've got things like boogaloos. Boogaloos is a term used by some domestic terrorist actors to refer to the start of the Second Civil War, driven by perceptions of government overreach, including firearm legislation. And then, of course, you've got the military violent extremists, and of course, you've also got white supremacist extremists as well. But the key word here, again, remember, is domestic terrorism. And I really feel like domestic terrorism is sort of like the next big sort of word that's going to be mentioned around in the next phase of trying to invade and sneak into our personal lives as much as it can. Look, I'm not denying that there's probably some shady shit obviously happening on Discord. I'm not denying there's definitely extremism that is talked about on certain subreddits. And I'm certainly not denying that the internet isn't a current hotbed for, radicalizing people to the end of the earth, okay? These are all things that I very much agree with. I don't think that there isn't a case that somebody could make that, these platforms, through their algorithms and their systems, aren't pushing people into very radical directions. That's not a good thing. But ultimately, when I see leaked documentation like this, the thing that immediately burns into my head real quickly is, what is it that politicians say? Never let a good tragedy go to waste. After 9/11, which is probably one of the most shocking terrorist attacks in the entire planet, it was one of those things where I remember when I was in high school, one of my we had a class, it was civics, or it was I don't know, some political stuff. But the teacher had this poster that stuck into my head. It was a poster that showcased the magazine covers of every magazine, every popular magazine in every country. So you just see different languages and different reactions to images of the Twin Towers falling. And I'm there's probably never been an event probably larger than 9/11 in human history that has shaken the international world at such an exact point in time. And obviously, with 9/11, many people lost their lives, not just people in 9/11, but the war that had led after 9/11. I mean, there was over, 1 million people dead, a million bodies before, I guess things maybe started to stop. But more insane than that, too, obviously I'm not discounting the dead bodies, but it allowed the government to, implement new methods to spy on our day-to-day life, all because they wanted to, I guess, quote unquote, focus on national security, or again, like it's mentioned here, counterterrorism. Now, look, there is a fine line somebody has to have. There is a fine line when when you want to protect the masses from actual extremists out there. But I'm one of those people where I don't believe in rights getting completely encroached. I'm not somebody that believes in getting rid of basic rights and things that we have, the right to privacy, the right to prevent ourselves from being unlawfully searched and seized. And again, a lot of these rights are something that the people that made the U.S., the people that made the foundations of the democracy we're in, very much lived and died by. These are very important ideals. And I think going forward, a lot of the stuff that I've sort of seen brought up over here, this conversation for the last few weeks, is kind of trudging towards a pretty scary path. You've already got places like EU where, chat control is kind of being pushed through. You've already got, a constant attack on day-to-day encryption. The other day, goddamn, the UK wanted Apple to keep backdooring information for them. I mean, this is not something that's exclusive to one specific country. This is just a part of the world where, when a tragedy occurs, when things get so riled up, I don't even really think it's the government wanting to try to fix things. I think it's literally just them looking at a tragedy and thinking, let's not let it go to waste. Let's find some way to push more control on people. Let's find a way to fearmonger people to the point where they're willing to give up just more and more of their rights and freedoms every single day just for you. So I know I started this video off with kind of a laugh, but anytime I talk about this subject, I just want the people that watch my content, that have seen me, cover things like the dark web, seen me cover things like computer viruses, seen me cover things like computer security and your privacy, realize at the end of the day, I don't just show you these things, to laugh at. I show you these things so you can educate yourself on how to protect yourself, on how to go into the fucking internet connected world that we have and still maintain some level of your privacy. And I think going forward, in the next few years, it's going to be more important that you keep fighting for the right to access whatever websites you want, the right to fight the crazy government surveillance that we're in, and to understand that even amongst all of these organizations like Discord, stay far away from servers or meme channels where you might suspect a little bit of Fed posting. For anybody that doesn't know what Fed posting is the posting of violent threats on the internet ostensibly as an everyday citizen, but actually working as an undercover federal agent. Look, if you're ever part of any Discord groups that are getting a little too wild, right-click, leave server, and never fucking look back, okay? Because somehow I really think the future of, again, government surveillance and pinning bad shit onto people is starting to bleed its way into some of the most, popular communities that me and you engage in on an everyday basis. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.